Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. And in today's video, we're going to be continuing My Hero Academia Vows of Vengeance. What if Deku was a monster? Part 4. As always, if you're new to the channel or if you're a regular and you like what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, make sure you check out the previous installments of this series so you can be caught up and stay up to date as we continue into the next part. Now, we're not going to spend too much time here on the recap, just to know that we've gone through the sports battle trial arc with Claire and Izuku getting the win over Bakugo and Ida. However, this time, both Izuku and Claire would be playing the roles of the villains. But now, as we move into the USJ arc, we get a long-awaited confrontation. As more of Claire's past starts to be revealed, how will both she and Izuku react when the forces that they wish to go up against show their true strength? And can Izuku overcome a darkness that's starting to form deep within him? A darkness that's swelling to the surface. For all this and more, stay tuned as we now continue. My Hero Academia, Vows of Vengeance. What if Deku was a monster? Part 4. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Following the battle trial, both Izuku and Bakugo would be taken to Recovery Girl to be given some time to heal from their injuries. Claire would use one of her talismans with the word regenerate written on it, causing the hole in the fursuit that was Izuku to regrow and heal itself before he could finally transform. Of course, there was the truth that had to be revealed when it was asked just why Izuku couldn't turn back. Claire explained that if Izuku had transformed with the hole in his chest, there would be a real hole in his chest and he'd bleed out to death. But because he was transformed, he was able to stave off the injury, but he had to make sure he was repaired just fine beforehand. Of course, All Might would inquire about the two. Their powers were beyond anything he could have ever imagined. Of course, quirks came in all different shapes and sizes, from the most extraordinary to the most unusual. But these two, between Izuku's monstery form, fire-breathing type of quirk, and then there was Claire with her power to enchant words off of talisman into real life, they were definitely up there in the spectrum. But there was also something else. All Might watched on as Claire was helping Izuku. When he looked at her face, he thought he saw someone familiar. But no, it couldn't possibly be. At least, All Might didn't want to think. After a while, Mr. Aizawa would go over the results of the battle trial to everyone, to go over some of their strengths and weaknesses. And before long, they were also going to be planning their next trip, a trip to the USJ, a place where they could learn recovery rescue. Of course, before doing so, both Claire and Izuku had another stop they needed to make. Izuku would stop by the support course, where he met a girl by the name of Mei Hatsume. She was a pink-haired girl who was bright and full of ideas and inventions. And one could say that she was definitely well endowed. Of course, Claire wouldn't really care about such things, but the girl just seemed to love putting her hands in places that they didn't need to be. Of course, this earned him a deathly stare, but Izuku had no idea why or just for what he had done. But thankfully, they had gotten help with what they had needed. The resources to make the coin-searching radar. Izuku now had what they needed, and now it was time for them to make another stop. They would visit with Alien. If they could just borrow a coin that he had in his possession, not to use it or anything, but just to get the idea of what they'd be looking for, then they could use their radar and really start their search. Of course, there was also the daunting task of trying to figure out where a coin could be in Japan. Keep in mind, they were searching for 12 coins, but Japan was a large country. There was no telling just where it could be or where it could be hidden. For all they knew, they could end up finding themselves in the mountains or in the beaches down to the south, or deeply lost in the forest. They could find themselves anywhere. And God forbid if a building or a house was built on top of it, it meant they'd have to try to do excavation. There was just no telling where the coins could be. And even worse, the possibility that it might have gotten washed out into sea. And if that was the case, then they'd never find it. But even still, it was better than nothing, and they had to work with what they had. Before long, the trip to the USJ would be upon them. The students of Class 1A all hopped on a bus as they drove over to the site. The students speaking and talking amongst themselves, while the class rep, Ida, tried to keep everyone in line. Of course, Izuku and Claire sat together in the back, and some of the students would talk to them, asking about their powers and their abilities, and they gave vague but reasonable answers. For both Izuku and Claire, they had never lost track of why they had come to UA in the first place, what they were truly after, and their goals. Of course, the camaraderie was more than welcomed and appreciated, but in the end, they thought it would be best not to try to get too attached. Eventually, the students would arrive, meeting with the hero known as 13, the rescue hero, where she would go over with the students all the aspects of rescue, and that being a hero was more than just fighting villains, but it was also helping civilians, saving lives and property if possible. Of course, the staff had to speak amongst themselves, as All Might was supposed to be here, but for some reason had to pull out at the last moment, or he was just going to be late. Mr. Aizawa thought all of this was rather troubling, but chose not to give it too much thought. Everything seemed to be going well, until Izuku, he could smell something. He wasn't really sure what it was, but it didn't seem right. It was rather off-putting. It was something dark, sinister even. Or at the very least, there were more presents here than should be. Off to the very other side of the USJ, a dark portal would open. As a young man, wearing black, covered in hands that even covered his face, as his shaggy blue hair fell down, and his piercing red eyes could glow through the fingers. He looked out as his servant, a being dressed in formal attire, however his body being that of a black gaseous substance, stood by his side. So, Kurogiri, this is the infamous USJ. I see a bunch of kids, but no All Might. It appears he is not here as our sources would have indicated. A change of plans, I presume? Always a change. I don't like it. But we've come all this way. I think we should be hospitable and leave our symbol of peace with a gift. He can pick up the pieces. Kurogiri would agree. As the doors to the USJ would close, Mr. Aizawa looked and saw as the portals opened and a flood of villains started to come forth. Many of the students started to be scared in that moment, not sure of what to do in this situation. This wasn't a test, these were real villains that were coming. Izuku looked at Claire, the both of them extremely nervous by this. Of course, they had dealt with their fair share of fighting some superpowered beings before, so it was nothing new. In fact, they almost reveled in the idea. But they weren't so cold-hearted not to recognize that not all of their students shared in the same sentiment. And things didn't get much better, as the warp villains started sending random villains and random students to different locations all throughout the USJ. Claire and Izuku finding themselves stuck in the water zone with a bunch of water-based villains looking to attack. However, both Claire and Izuku were ready. Izuku, using his strength and his sharp senses, was able to move them to higher ground on the boat, while Claire, seeing all of her targets in the water, decided to give them a shocking experience. Taking a piece of broken debris on the ship, she used one of her talismans, metal, to transform the debris into a piece of metal, before throwing it into the air and launching another talisman on top of it, the talisman for electricity. The electrified piece of metal fell into the water, giving all the villains a rather devastating shock. Along with keeping them paralyzed just long enough, Claire and Izuku would make their way through the USJ, along with the other students, as they were managing to fight off the villains rather effectively. Izuku would comment that they weren't all that imposing or dangerous, and that if they all played their cards right, they should be able to handle these guys no problem. If it was only that simple. If these were the only villains that they had to face, if it ended with just this, then Izuku's statement would have proven true. However, in life, things hardly ever go as easily as anticipated. Because as you could see, the villains, they had come with a lot more. They had come with the express purpose of killing All Might, something they made very clear to Mr. Aizawa, as he was fending them off rather effectively in the center of the USJ. However, one creature had been warped to their location, one that was more fearsome and deadly than anything that Mr. Aizawa had ever experienced. It was a creature that was scarred and torn, large and muscular, almost to the size of All Might. It had a bird-like face, and its brain could be seen through its head in a dome. It was a creature with dark black skin that had scars and gashes torn all through it. It was more monster than man, something that Shigaraki referred to as Nomu. The Nomu had been summoned and given his orders. Destroy everyone. Mr. Aizawa tried his best to fend off against the Nomu. However, despite using his quirk, Erasure, to erase the beast's abilities, it had multiple. And even then, it was just sheerly stronger than him, thrashing and beating him senselessly into the ground. Mr. Aizawa knew that he couldn't hold out for much longer. This was going to be the end for him. The best thing he could do was give his students a chance. If they could get out of here, if they could get help, then that would have been good enough for him. Izuku and Claire, seeing this, knew that they had to do something. But Claire, taking a closer look, a feeling of shock would wash over her. Her crimson red eyes glaring back into the crimson red of Shigaraki. As the two met, Claire would go dashing forward immediately, Izuku following close behind as he transformed into his monstrous state. Claire, what's going on? Just follow me, Izuku. It looks like fate is finally with us. What? Claire said nothing as they continued. The Nomu was ready to smash its fist and squash Mr. Aizawa's head into the ground. But before it could, Izuku would catch the punch before turning over and slamming the Nomu down. This is a worrying development. It looks like UA has its own monster. I'm not surprised you have a thing for monsters. Shigaraki turned as he looked at the girl. A warrior shrine maiden. Boy, you heroes in your weird outfits. And just what the hell do you want with me? You're looking at me like you know me. You don't remember me? Wow. And here I was thinking I couldn't be any more pissed at you. Remember you? Why should I remember you? What significance do you have in my life? Significance? Are you serious? Don't play dumb with me, you bastard! You know exactly who I am, and you know exactly what you did! Claire's eyes began to well up in tears as she pulled out the flame talisman. You killed our family! You don't remember that? Maybe I shouldn't expect much from you, because you're nothing but a monster! You're a damn demon! And now, I'm going to rid you from this world! Be gone, Shigaraki! Claire activated the flame talisman and shot out a massive burst of fire towards him. It seemed as though he would have been caught in the flame if a portal hadn't been opened immediately, catching the fire. Kurogiri stood by his master's side, but Claire wasn't done, as she picked up a stone. Bow and arrow talisman! Fire talisman! Combine! Using 2 more talismans, she would turn the stone into a bow and arrow, before using the elemental talisman to turn it into a bow and arrow made out of fire. She focused directly onto Shigaraki as she pulled back the bow and started shooting the arrows of fire towards him, Kurogiri creating multiple portals to try to block them. In the meanwhile, Izuku found himself fighting against the monstrous Nomu. Izuku had never been pushed to this state before. He had never known that he would even have to use this much power. As the two collided, the Nomu had nearly knocked off his large mascot head. However, Izuku bounced back with a right hook of his own, catching the Nomu flat on the jaw and knocking it to the ground. You're a tough one, aren't you? Well, I'm not done yet. Let's go! As Izuku fought against the Nomu, Claire would unleash fiery arrow after arrow onto Shigaraki. Shigaraki ducked and dodged, and Kurogiri used his warping ability to send many of the arrows as far away as possible. However, Claire would not give up on the assault. I know her? Shigaraki tried to run through the memories in his mind. That day in particular, what did he remember? He remembered them. He remembered his father. That bastard. The one that made his life a living hell. For a long time, he lived with regret for what he had done. But slowly, he got over it. He remembered them. He remembered their bodies crumbling into nothing. The only thing that was left were hands. But then another memory came back to him. He remembered hearing crying behind the door. A small girl begging him to stop, to go away. He attempted to grab the handle and the girl screamed for her life. She called for her mommy and daddy to save her from this monster. The girl in the closet. That's who she was. For so long, he had blocked out that memory. He didn't even think about it. But this was her. The girl in the closet. The crying. The insufferable noise. It was her. So, that's who you are. Huh? You're the girl in the closet. The insufferable whining. I couldn't remember everything. I thought I killed all of you. But you survived. You lived. And this is what you've done with your life. Trying to hunt down me? I'm touched, sis. Really, I am. You know, I thought I got rid of all of you. But you've given me an even better present. It's not killing All Might. But this is definitely a second. I get to wipe out a useless bloodline. So I thank you. I'm gonna enjoy watching you crumble to dust. Kurogiri would work in combination with Shigaraki, creating almost a dark prison mist. Claire found herself surrounded, and throughout the shackling chains of the mist, multiple hands would seemingly come out of nowhere. It was Shigaraki. He was warping through the portals, trying his best to tag Claire whenever she wasn't on guard, and he managed to tag her in the ankle of her foot, causing her to keel over in pain. However, she had managed to fight through it and dodge another attack that would have landed his palm square on her chest. She tried to launch more of her fiery arrows, but her talismans were at their limit. As she attempted to use more, Kurogiri would create a warp gate right near her belt, causing her talismans to fall over, as Shigaraki would disintegrate them into nothing. It looks like you don't have your little paper for your tricks anymore, sis. So what are you gonna do this late in the game? Low on HP? Your abilities are kaput? All you've got is nothing but hope and meaningless ambition. If you were gonna try to step up to a boss, then you should have leveled up first. Well, I think it's game over for you. Izuku, struggling against the Nomu, looked up and saw what was about to happen. Shigaraki had Claire backed into a corner. She didn't have any of her abilities. There was nothing that she could do. She was powerless. Claire couldn't believe it. She had to think of something, anything. Quickly, she reached down and she felt something warm coming out of her foot. It was blood. Quickly, she dipped her fingers into the blood as she wrote down a letter, a word, into the palm of her hand. As Shigaraki reached his hand out towards hers, Claire would reach her hand back. On it, she had the word written, repel. Immediately, Shigaraki would be pushed back. However, Claire's arm, her left arm, would be broken in multiple places. The force of the repel, it pushed him back, but the force pushed back on her arm. She yelled out in pain. She could hardly stand on both feet, and her arm had been decimated. Izuku called out for her. However, the Nomu kept him on the ground, unable to move. Shigaraki stood back up also, with his right arm seemingly destroyed. You bitch! Ugh. That hurt. Oh, yeah. You know, I was gonna finish you off quick and easily. But you know what? Now, I'm gonna do it slow. I'm gonna let you feel every aching moment of your body falling to pieces. I want you to feel every cell being ripped apart, every muscle being decayed. I'm gonna start out slow. I'm gonna work from the tip of your toe all the way to the top of your head. And I'm gonna make sure you feel every bit of it. Shigaraki was ready to finish things with her. Izuku, he couldn't let things end this way. Claire, she didn't have anything left as Shigaraki made his approach. He did it slow and methodic. He wanted to play with her mind, torture her. Every step he took, what seemed like passing seconds, felt like an eternity. For Claire, it forced her back into that state, remembering that night in the closet, remembering how it felt as though the monster was just moments away from grabbing her. Tears welled up in her eyes. She begged for it to stop. She begged for it to stop. She was desperate. She wanted someone, anyone. She didn't want to die. Not like this. She didn't want to die. Izuku felt a rage boiling inside of him. Even with his power, he still felt useless. He roared and screamed, desperate. Something had to give, anything. Feeling it boil up inside, his body started to shrink. Once again, he found himself in his suit. However, his body had transformed. No longer was he Izuku, but no longer was he in his regular monster form. He had now turned into something entirely different. A being, a creature. The black Oni mask that he wore, a part of his hero costume, had now morphed into the mask of a rabbit. From under the mask, a green flame would spew out. Izuku would roar as he pulled the Nomu off of his body, throwing him and slamming him onto the ground. Shigaraki's attention would turn as he looked and saw what was taking place. And just what the hell is that? I have no idea, my master. It seems like that boy has transformed into another monster. A transforming monster. Do you think it's anything like our Nomu? I doubt it. Perhaps it's the boy's ability, morphing and evolving before our very eyes. As Nomu got back onto his feet, Izuku lunged towards it. It started to beat it into the ground, its strength increasing tenfold. Claire looked as she paid close attention to Izuku in that moment. He wasn't the same as he used to be. No, the fur costume, it looked like it had shrunk. It was as if Izuku was now wearing the suit instead of being the suit. Izuku didn't speak any words. He roared and spewed out his flame. The Nomu got back up over and over again as Shigaraki taunted. My Nomu not only has shock absorption, but also nullification. It was designed to beat All Might in its prime. You don't stand up. Izuku grabbed the Nomu by the face as it stood and held in front of its own face. It would use its flames as it burnt the head of the Nomu, the green flame continuing to spew out of its mouth. The Nomu yelled and shrieked. However, nothing could stop the green flame from emitting, until eventually the head would be completely seared. Nothing remained but a stump. The Nomu's body would fall to the ground. The power of regeneration should have worked under any other circumstance. However, the brain was the core. Without the brain, the body could not regenerate. Kurogiri would warn his master to turn back. This boy had somehow managed to kill their Nomu. Shigaraki looked on, a sense of fear welling inside of him. No, no, no! No! How? How did he kill my Nomu? This isn't fair! To make matters worse, a gunshot would ring, hitting him in his leg, his hand, and his arm. The pros had arrived, as Tenya Ida had managed to escape and get their help. Among them, the #1 hero, All Might. Seeing that resistance had now become futile, Kurogiri would warp Shigaraki away. Shigaraki looking to his sister, and then looking to the rabbit boy. You'll pay for this. I swear, you'll pay. As they disappeared, Izuku simply stood there. All Might quickly rushed onto the scene to see what happened. Seeing the body, seeing Claire, and seeing... Was that even Izuku? He had now transformed into something else. But just what on earth was he? Claire would help herself to her feet as she stumbled over to him. All Might asked for the girl to rest, but she couldn't. She couldn't when Izuku was in so much pain. Right now, Izuku was fighting every urge in his body. Every urge he had to rip, to destroy, to burn everything to the ground. And Claire knew this. She reached over and gave him a hug. It's okay, Izuku. I'm fine. Please. Please come back to me. Come back to me, Izuku. Using her one good arm, she reached to the back of Izuku's head, and she felt the zipper. As she pulled it down, the suit would fall and disintegrate like ashes to the wind. And Izuku was now back to his normal self, although his eyes were in a daze, as if the boy wasn't conscious of anything at all. He collapsed into Claire's arms. She held him close. Today had been a day that she would never forget. But now, despite everything that she had been through, she only had one focus on her mind, and that was the boy collapsed in her arms. This concludes My Hero Academia, Vows of Vengeance. What if Deku was a monster? Part 4. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Re:Zero Avatar Lost. What if Aang was in Re:Zero? Season 1, Part 2. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.